He looked right through me, like I was just another face in the crowd. But once, he held me like I was his world. Now he's a billionaire, and I'm just me. But he forgot something. I never stopped loving him, and I had a plan to remind him. Before I take you through the twists and turns of how I made a billionaire, remember a love he once left behind. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because this story, you won't believe how it ends. I met him before the world knew who he was, before the money, the tailored suits, the headlines calling him the next tech prodigy. Back then, he was just Jordan to me. We were both trying to survive college on microwaved meals and half-slept nights. I was buried in books, studying literature and losing myself in stories. He was obsessed with code, always scribbling ideas in the margins of his notebooks. We found comfort in each other. We'd meet up at the campus cafe, sometimes just to sit in silence while working on our own things. Other times, we'd talk for hours about our dreams, his of changing the world with technology, mine of writing something that mattered. He made the future feel possible, like we were building something together even if we had nothing yet. He used to say, "When I make it, I'm taking you with me." He said it with so much certainty, like it was already written somewhere, and I believed him. Because when he looked at me, I didn't feel like just another college girl. I felt like his person, the one who saw him before the world did, the one who believed he could become everything he dreamed. It happened slowly, then all at once. After graduation, everything shifted. Jordan got an internship in Silicon Valley. It was supposed to be for the summer. Just a stepping stone, he said, nothing permanent. We promised to call every night, text throughout the day, visit each other every other weekend. At first, we did. The calls were long and full of excitement. He'd tell me about boardrooms and prototypes. I'd read him bits of the novel I was working on. We still laughed. We still said, "I love you." But little things started changing. He stopped answering my calls right away. Our weekend plans turned into apologies. "I'm swamped," he'd say. "Just one more deadline." I told myself it was temporary, that he was just busy chasing his dream, the dream he once said I was a part of. Then one day, it all came down to a single message, a short, cold email, not even a phone call. "I need to focus on my future. I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation, no fight, no goodbye that made sense. I remember staring at my screen for hours, reading those lines over and over, as if the words might change if I just looked long enough. But they didn't. He was gone, just like that. I didn't cry right away. I felt hollow, like the part of me that believed in us had vanished. All the promises, the plans, the whispered dreams, it felt like they'd never been real. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to hate him. Even in the heartbreak, I still held on to the boy I once knew, the one who kicked a vending machine for me, the one who said, "When I make it, I'm taking you with me." After Jordan left, I felt like I had to relearn how to breathe. Everything reminded me of him. Old texts, playlists, even the corner table at the cafe where we used to sit. At first, I let the sadness drown me. I barely ate. I couldn't write. I'd scroll through social media and see his face on tech blogs, interviews, panels. He was rising, fast, and I was still here, trying to piece myself back together. But something shifted one morning. I woke up, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because I was broken, but because I'd forgotten who I was without him. That scared me more than losing him ever did. So I started again. I poured myself into my writing, page after page, story after story. I launched a blog, then a podcast. I wrote about healing, about heartbreak, about finding yourself after being left behind. And people listened. Women reached out. They told me my words helped them feel less alone. That's when I realized maybe I didn't need to be part of someone else's dream. Maybe I could build my own. Years passed. I opened a small bookstore cafe in the city. My dream finally living and breathing. Life was simple but peaceful. I had built something real, something that didn't disappear in an email. Still, on quiet days, I'd think about him, wonder if he ever thought about me, if he ever regretted walking away. But I didn't chase those thoughts for long, because I was no longer the girl waiting to be remembered. I had become the woman who remembered herself, and that was the most powerful thing I had ever done. It had been years since I'd seen his face in person. I wasn't looking for him, not really, but life has a strange sense of humor. I was invited to a networking event. Nothing fancy, just a local tech and creatives mixer downtown. A friend practically dragged me out of my bookstore, insisting I needed to meet people. I wasn't in the mood, but something in me said, go. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fate. I walked in, smiled politely, did the small talk dance. And then I froze. There he was, Jordan, standing just a few feet away, surrounded by a small circle of admirers. He looked different, sharper, polished, confident in a way that made it clear he knew exactly who he was, but also somehow colder. He wore the success like armor. My heart pounded in my chest. For a moment, I thought about turning around, slipping out before he saw me. But then I thought, no, I've built myself up from the ground. I'm not that girl anymore. I took a breath, smoothed my dress, and walked toward him. Jordan, I said, soft but steady. He turned to me. Eyes met mine, and nothing. There was a polite smile, that familiar nod successful people give strangers at events. He didn't recognize me, not even a flicker of recognition. My heart didn't break, it shattered. How could he not see me, not remember? Sorry, he said casually. Have we met? I wanted to laugh, or cry, or both, but I just smiled and shook my head. It's okay. I think I mistook you for someone else. I walked away with my head high, but inside I was spiraling. Not because I still loved him, but because we had been everything once, and now I was no one. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment, replaying the moment over and over. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was stunned. Stunned that someone who once memorized the curve of my laugh could look me in the face and feel nothing. But I wasn't going to let it end like that. If he had truly forgotten our story, I was going to remind him, not out of revenge, not out of ego, but because love like ours doesn't just vanish. He just needed to remember. I couldn't sleep that night. My thoughts were stuck on a loop, his blank expression, his voice saying, "Have we met?" Like I was a footnote in a book he never finished reading. I didn't want closure. I didn't want an apology. I just needed him to remember, to know that what we had was real, that I wasn't some passing blur in his rear view. So I wrote him a letter, not a dramatic, angry one, just honest, raw. I didn't hold back. I told him about the night we watched stars from the rooftop of our dorm, the time he skipped class to surprise me with dollar store cupcakes on my birthday, the way he used to fall asleep mid-sentence on the phone, still holding on because he didn't want to hang up first. I wrote about the things I was sure no one else would know, our inside jokes, our little rituals, the words he once whispered into my hair. I signed it with the nickname he gave me back then, the one only he used. I dropped it off at the front desk of his hotel the next morning. 2 days passed, nothing. Then, just as I was locking up the bookstore one evening, I saw a figure standing by the door, hoodie up, head down. He turned, and it was him, Jordan. He didn't say anything right away. He just looked at me, not with confusion, not like a stranger, but with something else, something deeper, like he was trying to hold back a tidal wave of memory. I remember, he finally said. His voice cracked on the words. God, I remember everything now. He told me he read the letter 3 times, cried the second, couldn't believe what he'd forgotten. He apologized, said the years had buried parts of himself he didn't know were missing, said he became so focused on success, he forgot the soul of who he used to be. And I was part of that soul. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, two people with too much history and no roadmap. But in his eyes, I saw the boy I once loved. And maybe, just maybe, he was seeing the girl he never truly left behind. We sat in my bookstore that night after I let him in. I brewed us 2 cups of tea, like old times, though neither of us really touched them. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful, almost sacred, like we both knew that whatever was about to be said, it had to be real. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and sighed. I didn't forget you, he said softly. I forgot myself. At first, I didn't understand what he meant, but then he started to talk. He told me that after he moved to Silicon Valley, everything became about winning. Success wasn't a goal, it was an addiction. The pressure, the investors, the constant grind of trying to prove himself, it swallowed him whole. He worked 18-hour days, stopped calling his family, lost track of birthdays, holidays, emotions. He said there were whole months that felt like a blur. He admitted that somewhere along the way, in trying not to feel anything, he chose to forget the things that made him human. That included me. I buried the memories because they made me feel too much, he said, and I didn't think I could afford to feel anything if I wanted to win. Hearing that broke me in a strange way, not out of hurt, but out of understanding. I could see the pain in his eyes, the regret. He wasn't just apologizing for forgetting me, he was apologizing for the version of himself he had become. I wasn't ready back then, he confessed. I thought letting you go would make me stronger, but it just made me empty. I didn't interrupt. I let him talk, because part of me needed to hear it, but another part of me knew he needed to say it even more. When he finished, he looked at me and asked, Is it too late to remember now? And I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But in that moment, I knew this wasn't about picking up where we left off. This was about two people, changed by time, trying to find out if love could survive everything it had been through, even silence. Starting again didn't look like fireworks or slow motion embraces. It looked like small, deliberate steps, morning texts that simply said, Hope you eat today. Surprise lattes left on the bookstore counter, short walks after I closed up shop. We agreed on nothing rushed, nothing borrowed from our past. If we were going to build something now, it had to belong to the people we had become, not the kids we once were. Jordan began visiting every Friday evening, sitting on a stool behind the register while I tallied receipts. He'd ask about inventory systems and quietly sketch software solutions on napkins. I'd roll my eyes at his enthusiasm, then find myself smiling because he wasn't trying to impress me. He was trying to be useful. After closing, we'd head to the tiny cafe 2 doors down, and he'd listen while I read new pages from my novel. Sometimes he'd laugh at a line, and I'd catch the boyish grin I thought I'd lost forever. We talked boundaries. I told him I wouldn't be anyone's afterthought again. He promised he wouldn't vanish into deadlines without warning. When an investor dinner popped up, he invited me, but I declined, choosing instead to host a poetry night at the store. He sent a bouquet with a note, Proud of you. There was no guilt, no pressure, just mutual respect for the separate orbits that made us whole. Little moments stitched themselves into a quiet tapestry. Him fixing a loose shelf, me proofreading his keynote speech, shared playlists, shared silences, learning to say sorry before the hurt calcified. It wasn't perfect, and we didn't pretend it was, but each day felt like a choice to stay present, to remember. And in that steady, ordinary rhythm, I realized love can survive forgetting, so long as remembering is followed by the courage to begin again. Love doesn't always look like fairy tales, but sometimes it gives you a second chance. If you felt something during my story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because every heart that's been broken deserves a reminder that love can find its way back.